most of the AI tools being built right now aren't really being built for designers. They're being built for the people who want to skip designers.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.
We just got back from Stripe sessions. It was 3 days in San Francisco. I flew all the way from Japan. Jeff flew from Oklahoma. We had people flying in from all over. We all met in San Francisco. It was 3 days. We probably did well over 500 demos. And the thing that I keep coming back to, designers right now are feeling something I think that we don't quite have the language for yet. And there's like almost this low-grade anxiety about the craft. None of that is really what you read in like any of those industry reports. So that's kind of what this video is. This is going to be our read on what we saw, fingers to the pulse. So let's go.
They sing on a sleepless night.
I think a lot of the ones that stood up to me were the designers. When I talked to designers, I did that kind of aha moment of like, that was the first time I think that designers, all these designers I talked to, felt like they have the potential to actually have a seat at the table. Designers now have kind of an equal say. Engineers don't have to really worry about it. With translating design to code, they can worry about themselves. Was kind of a relief a little bit as well. So no, I think seeing designers light up with being able to get that actual control they have been wanting for 30 years, and also engineers being able to kind of relieve themselves of having to kind of worry about pixel precision and, and translating the design.
No matter what role you are, you're doing some form of like vibe coding. There's usually almost always fewer designers to engineers, and they're looking to keep up with their counterparts who are often, shipping at increased amounts of productivities.
So the other thing that kept showing up, I think it's that designers feel the craft is changing. So like the tools are faster, AI generations get more and more insane, mind-blowing every week. And nobody, I think, is quite yet sure like what that's going to do to the craft itself, to the work itself. Is AI sharpening us, or is it quietly kind of just taking over the parts that used to make us feel like designers in the first place? And I think that's one of the questions that we kept coming back to.
That's a good question. Back when I was kind of in Photoshop and in Sketch and Figma, like I think a lot of the times I was really hyper focused on details and like really making kind of the interactions and the delight there and giving personality and really hyper focusing on the design and visual aspects of thing, right? But nowadays it seems like people are thinking less and less about those details and less about the delight and more about how do I build the thing that I'm thinking about in my head. And now I have the control to actually build my dream or build the thing that I'm thinking of, and I can do it.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. I saw Gabriel Valdivia tweeted something about the creative process in the age of AI. And it's like that classic line, that line where it's like the creative process and then it flattens back out and it's smooth again. But so much of the delight, so much of the craft, so much of the magic, so much of the unexpected discoveries happens during that. I wasn't even looking for it, and I discovered a better way to do it.
I think the role of a designer is changing because AI can enable you to move so much faster on the build side of things. The folks that traditionally didn't know how to build can now build, and those that could already build before can now build faster. It makes almost no sense not to build. Before, there was always this discussion around should designers code? And now I think that is done and gone. And a designer who's building something with Claude Code isn't actually coding. They're not actually writing the code. They're building it, but they're not actually writing the code.
As like one of the engineers in the group, not a designer. And what I see is currently design tooling trying to ride the wave of generative AI and bring this amazing technology to designers. It only has one option currently, which is to do so through text, which means code first becomes the default, becomes the norm. And that's something that I heard from the designers at sessions was, I don't want to work in code. I want to work in a visual canvas like Figma.
When it rains, it pours. Water's up to my chin.
the AI tools being built right now aren't really being built for designers. They're being built for the people who want to skip designers. They take those things and kind of replace them with a prompt. Really, I think designers are quietly desperate for someone to fix, and not because it's not solvable. I think it's because nobody who has the resources to solve it is even trying. And that's the thing I think nobody is saying. And it kind of matters that somebody does.
Yeah, I mean, coming from a pretty big corp-sized business, getting into this new age of building things, I can tell you that the gap is naturally closing, but it's also bringing to the surface like net new problems that are in essence the same as they have been for 30 years.
If you think about what LLMs are actually doing, they're making it possible to write code faster. They're not making it possible to write new kinds of code. They're just parroting what they've been trained on, but it's not actually fixing anything. And so it's just speeding up your abilities and thereby speeding up the existing problems. And those things are coming to the surface faster. So like Jason was saying, we're still not in a world where design and engineering are connected. And so like he said, engineers are trying to design and designers are trying to engineer. And it's the same problems we had before, just accelerated.
The root of the question for me is like, is there a difference between design and engineering besides like how we work or what we do? Like there's a fundamental different way of thinking between how you build something and how something should work, like how something should flow and how users should experience something. But there's no real large scale world where that gap just completely disappears. I think to Drew's point, the problems are going to start surfacing where the engineers who are designing are going to not be thinking about design challenges that happen as a designer thinks, right? And the same thing in reverse, a designer trying to build things, they're not going to think about the architecture and the systems design the way an engineer would think about things, right? And so is that fundamentally a bad thing? I don't think so, because actually you see a lot of designers today creating a lot of the really cool shit, right? In fact, all of the real crazy prototypes are probably, I think the majority of them coming from designers.
Good
One
point.
thing I can just say is like, I don't think that we will ever see the gap close. I think it just means that there will be a more smooth, fluid transfer between both sides. So I think, Jeff, your points, I 100% agree. The work of a designer is fundamentally different than the work of an engineer. And so how do we take care of the handoff, that translation, but the communication between traditional design roles and engineering roles, so that engineers are not doing things that we can solve. So that way you can get your systems that you're designing, both as a designer and an engineer, out faster to your users, to your customers, and everyone wins.
And that is what's so crazy to me. Everybody knows that this problem exists. And I would have thought by now, a bunch of teams would have already been tackling this, but still nobody is. And I'm still so surprised that in a world of AI where you can build almost anything, still nobody is deciding or choosing to go at the core of the problem and try to pull these two worlds together, design and engineering. Everybody else that's launched, not touching it. They're all just continuing down the road of keeping design and engineering separate practices.
I think designers are sitting at really the start of our version control moment. And designers really haven't had any of that this whole time. I think the wildest part is most designers can feel it. I think they just don't have the language for it. And they know that the current tools are kind of broken. They know the AI stuff isn't quite the answer. Another or faster kind of translation layer. That's what I think we saw at Sessions. That's the read. So let's see if it holds up.
Where are we? What are we doing?
I didn't know where he was. Man, what are we doing? I don't have a good answer to that. What are we doing?